We've started seeing this in January 2022 when we saw the Fed really change tack and say inflation isn't transitory anymore. If you look at that point and then the intraday price moves on Bitcoin, it was just like gold in that respect. And throughout the whole of 2022, 2023 and 24, when you see macro sensitive data, particularly around interest rates, such as CPI data this week, are incredibly important for Bitcoin prices, that's when you see the Bitcoin price react. So it'll be very interesting this week when CPI is released to see how Bitcoin moves.
The undercurrent around crypto was fascinating leading up to the market event we saw, because just like on stock markets where investors were getting a bit cautious around all the tech trades they'd put on in recent times and were starting to pull back slightly, same theme around the crypto industry, right, where some of the traders, commodity trading advisors were looking at some of the momentum that had in crypto and we're starting to pull back from those long positions as well. So it was already a change in motion when it comes to momentum, wasn't there?
Well, Bitcoin suffers from the summer doldrums just like other asset classes. And when we've seen, in June in particular, we saw the German government indiscriminately selling $5 billion worth of, or $3 billion worth of gold, and also Mt. Gox sales as well. So there was quite heavy selling pressure. And but what we've seen every time we've seen a price correction, actually investors are buying on that front. And so last week we saw over $200 million of inflows into Bitcoin and Ethereum. So investors really are taking advantage of price weakness to add to positions.
What did we make of liquidity in the crypto market last week as people were trying to get out? Because it seemed that centralized exchanges had the highest trading volume of spot trading since May 2021. And we know ETFs clearly a feature of the market this time around.
It's quite a difficult measure to measure, really. But on average, we're seeing around 14 to $15 billion of Bitcoin traded every day. Now, to put that in perspective, the London Stock Exchange trades around $4 to $5 billion. So it's an incredibly liquid asset. And we've seen during crises moments such as COVID in 2020 and most recently, when people are hunting down liquidity, they tend to use Bitcoin just like they did for gold during the great financial crisis.
What is, just in terms of regulation, in terms of just news flow as well, what does a possible Donald Trump presidency now mean for cryptos, especially considering his commentary on ultimately endorsing the cryptocurrency?
Yeah, so Bitcoin has really turned a corner this year with the SEC approval of a Bitcoin ETF. That was one thing. Then we saw an improvement in the UK, allowing institutional investors to buy Bitcoin now, and then also in Hong Kong as well. And we already have MICA in Europe. So from a regulatory perspective, it's really positive for Bitcoin. But then we've also had, for the first time, Trump discuss, and Cynthia Lummis discuss Bitcoin as a strategic reserve asset, potentially buying up to 5% of Bitcoin's total supply. That, in my mind, is much bigger than the SEC announcements. This is really big. That one of the largest, well, the largest country in the world talking about Bitcoin as a strategic reserve asset is just huge for the industry.
Is Bitcoin ready for that, in your view? Because it feels like it's something still fairly at the start of its long journey towards some sort of reliable currency, in my view. Well, I don't know. What about yours?
Is it? I mean, who is ready? The unusual thing about Bitcoin is it's faceless. You can't subpoena Bitcoin like you theoretically could with Ethereum. It is this faceless asset. It is just something that exists on the internet. So I think, is it ready? It's a hard question to really answer. It could lead to a situation where demand significantly outstrips the supply, the new supply coming online, particularly after the halving we saw earlier this year.
The problem with this story is that around the politics, it's potentially a career-changing trade if Trump is elected and he does push forward with crypto, versus the opposite of another go-nowhere trade if Harris is elected. So how do you position around both sides in the politics?
There definitely seems to be a bit of a dichotomy at the moment between Harris and Trump. Kamala Harris her team have said they are consulting and they seem open-minded about Bitcoin, whereas Trump's definitely much more pro. It's quite a binary event, and I do think the recent price declines over the weekend for Bitcoin are largely due to the polymarket data showing that Harris is ahead in the polls at the moment.
There's also a lot of pushback really in this industry because, one, you saw in the UK, HMRC targeting cryptocurrency investors and what is the latest crackdown on capital gains. FTX again ordered to pay customers $12.7 billion. The SEC has subpoenaed 3 crypto VCs and a sign that there's a crackdown that is gaining pace. Is this going to be something that has to be weeded out of the crypto space in order to gain a sense of, shall we say, reliance with more people as well?
It has been the Wild West for Bitcoin over the last 10 years, and slowly it's coming in line. I mean, it's not unusual behavior by humans. I mean, we've seen that in the railroad industry, a lot of sort of snake oil salesmen there too. And the Bitcoin industry isn't immune to that. And so we do see these moments, and I think over time they will subside, it will decline. And we're seeing that in the, say, Bitcoin volatility. It was 200% annualized vol 5 years ago. It's now 45% vol.
That means you have to wait for regulation, though. And is that finally catching up?
Well, that definitely is. I mean, just as I alluded to earlier, we've seen the SEC approvals, the UK government's coming, or the FCA is coming a little bit more in line with allowing Bitcoin. We will continue to hear headlines of various exchanges collapsing or various people doing nefarious things. And the SEC is still keeping the heat up and making sure that exchanges play ball and move into the kind of regulatory framework that the rest of the financial world adheres to.